Hey everybody, it's Kai from the Techno Funk Boy. Okay, so we one of the points of this channel is to kind of take a deeper look at some retro gaming music, and I thought it might be fun to kind of tear apart some of these songs and kind of see how they work from the inside. So this is kind of what goes into these songs to make them really cool. We're going to take a look at Dragon Warrior right now, because there's actually a couple of things that I think are very cool. So, quick beginner overview of NES music. So, we have, when it comes to the tone itself, we have square waves and we have triangle waves. Now, the reason they're called this is because of the way they look in the waveform. So the waveform is normally a cool little sine wave that you see, but triangle waves are actually triangles, and square waves are actually squares. And this is what the way they look when we produce these sounds. So there are three tracks for the music, and then there's the sound effect track, the kind of a noise track that that the games tended to use for not only the sound effects but also the drums, since they didn't need tones and you could do them with sounds, with noise. They would kind of add that extra track in there. Typically we use the square wave for our melody. And this is because it has a little bit of a punchier sound. Triangle waves have a much more smooth tone. We're going to actually take a listen to the difference here in just a second. I'm just giving you an overview, so when we go into it, you're gonna see what this all means. And they'll use some combination of these in order to make it sound the way it sounds. There are some variations that you can do with the triangle waves and the square waves to make them sound a little bit different, but essentially they sound like square waves and triangle waves because this is what the NES can produce. And these are the noises that will typically be called chiptune today, which is kind of a genre of music that tries to harken back to these cool old gaming systems. So let's head over to Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest. So my the little emulator that I have it up over here on my screen, and we'll kind of turn the music on a little bit. So you're going to hear the overworld theme, right? I'll turn it up and down as we need it, but you can hear it in the background. So this is kind of cool. This program is kind of cool because it's going to let me select the individual tracks and to mute some of the others. One thing that it took me a long time to notice, and it was actually pointed out to me in an interview I did for the Retro Zoo Super Show, which is a retro gaming podcast that I'm on, is that they're only using two of the three tracks in here, and no drum tracks. So this is actually very simple as far as instrumentation. There are two parts. And these tracks, by the way, they can't play chords. They can only play one tone at a time. And so you hear in the background, we're going to listen to it individually, but one track kind of doing arpeggios to create the chords, while the other track plays the melody. This is also an exceedingly short tune, and it cycles very quickly. We've already cycled several times. But I just turned off track 3, and nothing has changed because it doesn't use track 3, and it doesn't use the noise track. So let's actually turn this up, and we're going to turn off the triangle here. Alright, so now we have one square track, and you can hear the punchiness of it. It's the sound. It's to use a boxing analogy, because what would be more appropriate. It's like little jabs. It's quick. It hits the note really quickly. This is the track that's kind of doing these arpeggios. So it's creating it's creating these the chords, but it can't play the whole chord at once, so it's doing one note at a time. And that outlines the chord for us, so that it can create the entire chord without having to play more than one note at a time. If we move over to the triangle wave, you see this. The beginning of the note is not quite as abrupt. It's not quite as punchy. It doesn't have a huge like fade in or anything, but it doesn't have that pop to it. And this is one of the characteristics of the triangle wave, and one of the reasons that people normally throw it into the bass. They want that square wave to be punching out the melody very, very clearly, so that we can hear it, very, 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 distinctly. Whereas this tone has more subtlety to it. And they'll throw this in the bass where they don't need that kind of punch to it. They need it to be providing a foundation for the song. And this corresponds very much to like just regular like rock and roll, because you can play bass by slapping it, and that has that very abrupt sound, but most of the time we don't. Obviously depending on the player, but most of the time we don't hear it like that, and it has a little bit more of a subtle beginning to it. It's still distinct, but it doesn't have that pop to it. But this song is actually putting it in the melody. And I think they do that in order to get like kind of almost like a whistle tone. Like the square. When I hear this, what I'm imagining is they're trying to convey is the melody being played by some sort of medieval whistle type of an instrument, and this played on, plucked on strings like a lute or something like that. And I think it's very effective. By flipping the roles of the two parts, we actually get something that sounds like a little bit different than what we're expecting, like we have entered into a different age, like a different culture. We're not listening to rock and roll here. We are listening to a different time, and I think that's a very effective way of doing that. With the square wave creating the chords by itself, so the square wave doesn't need another track in order to create the chords for us. We have the fullness of the harmony here, because all it's doing is arpeggioing up and down, creating for us that entire background. And the triangle wave providing this very sweet melody. We don't actually need the other square track. This is very masterfully done in creating a whole song experience without even using the limited number of tracks that the NES provides. I think this is very, very cool stuff, and this remains one of my favorite NES tracks. I absolutely love it. There's one thing about this particular soundtrack, is that very, very, very few songs use all three voice tracks. In fact, it's only on the title screen and the ending credits. And anytime, and I really do wonder, it's like, exactly why they did it like that. But anytime you are actually playing, you are only hearing two tracks of music, and they continually use these kind of tricks in order to fill out the song while still keeping those two tracks. Personal theory of mine is that they were not sure, this being a brand new genre, they were not sure how the music would tax the system. And so they're like, hey, why don't we tone that down? We don't need all three instruments. Let's just make this a duet, man. But it also helps kind of giving it that at once an epic quality, but it harkens to almost a simpler time, almost a simpler style, while engaging us like on this level of like, this is not something that we were going to hear on the side of the road. We have entered into a different time and culture. So that is the theme for Dragon Warrior, and this is the first time we're doing something like this. If you do enjoy it, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe, leave a comment. That actually helps us a lot. This channel's been up for a while, but I haven't actually used it for anything except dumping podcast on until recently, and long story short, we're kind of a new channel without being technically new, but please do share and like this page, because that does let other people know that we're doing this, and we'll have more content for you. Right now we're uploading on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If y'all like this kind of stuff, then we will expand, so please do let me know, and we will see you later.